are. Welcome to the virtual information session for the Fatima House program. It's 2 hours long, as you can see, which is going to include 80 minutes of question and discussion, comments from the community. There's going to be a couple of presentations. I'm the facilitator. I'll tell you a bit more about the engagement process as we go through some slides, but we're glad you're here. And again, you know, sometimes you have to really persist to get through some of the technology, the streaming and the phoning. So really grateful that you're doing that. Of course, COVID has made these things very difficult, but of course, technologies like this, however challenging they can be, are also making it still possible. So we're grateful for that. Okay, so let me just see what we got here. We are recording this meeting. This meeting will eventually end up on the project website as a, entire recording of the proceedings. And so we want to really caution you and encourage you to not use any of your personal information. Like if you're saying, oh, just send it to me an email, here's my email, we could write that down and do that, but it's not what we want to have your personal information up on a recording. We can scrub some of it out, but ideally we just don't share personal information of any sort. But also know that this is a public meeting. This is a public record. So anything that you do say is on the public record. Now, we're not aware of any media people here, for instance, and usually they do us the courtesy of telling us that they're in the room, but they might be, they could be. So it's kind of a good operating principle that you just sort of say you're speaking publicly, and that means it's kind of in the public domain. So we'll talk in a moment more, in more detail about how the meeting will go and how the process works, but this should get you off to a good start. That's the meeting recording. All right, so I'm actually you're going to meet Brad shortly. He'll be doing a presentation, Brad Boucher of the City of Toronto's Shelter Support Housing Administration, but he is going to read the land acknowledgement on behalf of someone from the City of Toronto. So Brad, are you there and ready to read the land acknowledgement?
I am here and ready. You can hear me okay, I hope?
Yeah, I can.
Great. I'd like to acknowledge today that the land we are on is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands.
Thank you very much, Brad. Okay, so the presenters tonight will be, myself, facilitator, the Deputy Mayor and City Councilor for Ward 9, Anna Bailao. That was Brad Boucher, that you had the Manager of Shelter Support and Housing Administration Services, and Keith Hamley of the Fred Victor organization, who is operating the shelter. Just a few words about myself. I'm a facilitator, and I'm working with Leah Birnbaum, who's also on this meeting. She is the project lead and note taker in meetings such as this. So she's capturing your input. Your input, incidentally, is captured anonymously and unattributed. We'll be writing it up as a summary in addition to having it available as a recording. So we don't sort of say exactly who said what, but we capture the tenor and tone and aggregate it and put it into key themes and things like that. So that report and summary of this meeting will be posted probably within the next week to 10 days on the project site. We're here to hold space for this conversation and facilitate a community dialogue. We don't have, skin in the game, as it were, about an outcome. We're not advocating for one side or another. We are, here to guide the process, not the outcome. So that's our work as facilitator. And we'll go into a bit more detail about the community engagement process a bit later, but that is who I am. And I think that, oh, yes, of course, here we are about the engagement process. So tonight's meeting, I just want to read this so it's really clear. The purpose for this evening is to provide an overview of the Fatima House program and services and supports currently planned for the site. It is also to respond to questions, concerns, and offers of support from the community and begin the successful integration of the shelter into the community. As I said, the meeting is 2 hours, 35 minutes of introductions and an overview from the City of Toronto and Fatima House staff, 80 minutes of discussion, a few wrap-up remarks, and onward. At this time, I'd like to say that we have about 31 participants. It might go up, go down. I'll sort of do a little, update now and then, which is great. We have begun to receive email and phone calls and feedback, and do some basic work in the community to advertise the Community Liaison Committee that's coming together. And so we're on our way in terms of the engagement process. But this is the first public meeting, so thanks for coming. And I think we just go to the next slide. And actually have a welcome from Councillor Bailau. Over to you, Councillor.
Thank you, Jane, and I want to start by thanking everybody that is joining us here today, and the people that also have sent us emails, has contacted us by phone, has given us their suggestions, opinions, asked us their questions, and many people that actually offered to volunteer with Fred Victor actually in this project. So thank you all. I'm looking forward to the discussion today. I also want to take the opportunity to welcome Fred Victor. I've known of Fred Victor because they've been providing services to homeless in the city for decades. They're well established. They have a long relationship with the City of Toronto, and now they're going to be operating this shelter here at Gladstone and College. So I'm looking forward to the discussion, and I'll be able to give some closed remarks and most likely answer some of the questions and comments that people will have throughout the meeting, so I'll be able to address that as well. But once again, thank you to everybody for joining us. I was really hoping that we could have a meeting in person. I must say that it is very tiring and very frustrating to have these meetings. But like you said, Jane, at least we're able to meet this way and continue with the engagement, which is an important part of this process as well.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor. Yes, it's great to have you here. Acknowledging you're here very much in a listening capacity, and of course, if people want to ask questions, I'm certain the council will be making notes about this. But we're here to hear you and to answer as many questions as we have, specifically with the city staff and the Fred Victor people. But if you can reflect at the end, that would be great, Councillor. And of course, there's many opportunities to engage in all your questions and requests for information. We'll do our best to get to them in this session, and if not, in following up with frequent, emails, FAQs, website updates, and the rest. Let's say that we're all adults and we basically understand the concept of being respectable and holding space for each other's opinions. We welcome the full range of feedback and comments and questions and concerns. Really, just bring it all. Just bring it all respectfully. We're also asking people to limit their questions and comments to 2 minutes so we can move the mic around. And I will also be keeping the city staff and the Fred Victor staff to 2 minutes. So it's democratic that way. So we can hear from as many people as possible. And we just ask that, you acknowledge that everyone here is seeking, a safe and inclusive community. Let's take that as our baseline. And so we will be like that in our comportment. Of course, if anyone were to kind of, go outside the bounds of that respectability, I do have a mute button and it will be used. So, racist and for other forms of discriminatory and prejudicial or hateful comments will not be tolerated. But that hasn't happened in any of the meetings, and I'm not expecting it to, but, just know that there's, a space that we're holding for everyone here, respectfully. Okay. Webex and accessibility. If you do require accessibility-related accommodation, there are adaptive technologies on your phone that work better than Webex at this time. The City of Toronto is making efforts to up the game with Webex. The city is aware of the limitations. They're asking, for improvements in the service, but at this time, really the best available thing is to use the existing adaptive technologies that you would know already about if you are using accessibility-related accommodations. And now, we have on our next slide a note about raising our hand, but I'm actually going to skip this because we really need to hear this after the presentations. Like, just suffice to say that you can ask questions and raise your hand in two ways. You can type questions into a Q&A box on the lower right side of the screen, and you can verbally ask questions on audio. If you raise your hand, I'll see you in a speakers list. And you can do that on the phone too. There's you can dial a code and press 3 and so on. But we'll refresh that when we get. And also know that you can type a question in at any time during the presentation. We can, call on you to ask that question, or we'll ask that question. So if there's something that comes to mind, we welcome your questions at any time, especially through that chat feature. Okay. And so I want to pass it over now to Brad Boucher, the Manager of Operations and Support Services, Shelter Support and Housing Administration for the City of Toronto. Hello, Brad.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Brad Boucher. As Jane said, I'm the Manager of Operations and Support Services in Shelter Support and Housing. Most of my work revolves around contract management and working closely with all of our, what we call purchase of service providers, which are contracted service providers from the nonprofit sector that we work closely with to provide homelessness services throughout the city. So I wanted to take a few minutes to just run through 3 slides that can help give a little bit of context to this kind of the state of homelessness in our city in Toronto at this point. So just in terms of some context, our last street needs assessment, which was done in 2018, estimated that there was about 9,000 people in Toronto who are homeless on any given night. And of those 9,000, we estimated approximately 500 of them were spending the majority of their time outside, living outside rough. So we've been tracking, and we understand based on the data that we collect from our shelters that homelessness has been on the rise since about 2011. And also the length of time that people are staying in our shelters has become longer. So we're seeing about roughly 48% of our shelter residents now being considered chronically homeless, which means that they are homeless for 6 months or more out of the past year. So that's kind of how the homelessness context is shifting and changing. And there's a whole bunch of different reasons why that's happening. So even before our pandemic that we're in right now, our shelter system was running pretty much at capacity. So all of the beds that we had were generally speaking full every night. And despite the fact that we've added about 3,500 spaces to the system in the last 3 or 4 years, effectively doubling the size of the shelter system, we still continue to be running very close to capacity. The main reasons why that we see in our shelters that people are experiencing homelessness is migration and also the inability to pay the high cost of rent. Additionally, we see a lot of folks in our system that have undertreated mental health issues and are also being seriously impacted by the opioid crisis, and that it continues to contribute to the homelessness issues that we're experiencing and housing instability that we have in the city. So this next slide kind of just gives us a sense of the distribution of shelters throughout the city, and generally speaking, we do get comments and questions from folks about about how we're placing shelters and where shelters are being placed in the city, and whether there's any rhyme or reason to the way that we do that. So as you can see, there's lots of dots on this screen. We currently oversee about 56 shelter operations that are run by our purchase of service community partners. And the City of Toronto also operates an additional 11 shelter programs. And those are somewhat dispersed throughout the city, as you can see. And the red dots are permanent shelter programs, and the yellow dots represent programs that we've opened up more recently to support physical distancing in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Currently in Ward 9, you can see the little circle there on the screen. Ward 9 has currently has three active base shelter programs for men, youth, and women. So our knowledge, expertise, and responsibility in shelter support and housing is really focused on achieving three outcomes. We want to give people access to quality emergency shelter that's safe. We want to provide as much as possible housing-focused supports that ensure homelessness is as brief as possible, given the existing pressures that we're under, and also non-recurring. And we also want to make sure that low-income households have access to housing benefits so that we can provide them with affordability and stability so that they are not re-entering or entering the shelter system at any given time. Providing emergency shelter for people who are experiencing homelessness is an important community service, and it's not always easy, but it's extremely important. And these type of services, as you can see, are offered across the city and are located within communities because it's important for people staying at these locations to be connected to a community. Okay, my last piece is just kind of speaking a little bit about the criteria we use for selecting a shelter location. We often receive questions about how we make decisions on sites that are selected for new shelters. So I just want to talk a little bit about that. Our goal is to make sure that there's services as much as possible in all neighborhoods, so that as much as possible people can stay in their own communities if they happen to become homeless. This means, so if people need to utilize a homeless shelter, that they could potentially maintain their employment and stay connected with friends and family if they're experiencing homelessness. So in securing a shelter location, we always want to make sure that these locations meet city bylaws, are supportive of the City of Toronto's housing charter, and are kind of accessible and close to community services such as libraries, parks, pharmacies, and healthcare services, as well as public transit. So this site is a little different, only because this is a relocation, and it was actually Fred Victor that initiated the search for a new site. And in doing so, they searched for a building that met the criteria that I just identified. And in our normal process, we do engage with communities after the site has occurred, after the site has been secured, in order to do some engagement and to focus on the integration of the shelter program into the community, and that is why we're here tonight. So just to provide you a little bit more information about that, I'll turn it over to Keith Hambley, who is the CEO from Fred Victor.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Brad, and good evening, everyone. My name is Keith Hambley. CEO here at Fred Victor. And thank you, Councillor Bayal, for commenting a bit about Fred Victor's history and longevity in the City of Toronto. We're next slide, please. We're a multi-service agency that has been around for over 125 years in the city, and our strong commitment has always been since 1894 of ending homelessness in Toronto. And currently we support on every day nearly 2,000 people coming into our programs, whether it be in our shelter programming, our community programming, our mental health program services across the City of Toronto, our housing, food services, as well as our employment support and employment services across the city. We have currently 20 locations across the city, from Scarborough to the West End to the North End of Toronto, and of course in the downtown and downtown east area. Through those programs, we offer a range of not only community programming, but shelter and affordable housing, transitional housing for men, women, and families across the City of Toronto. And we offer health and income supports along with food security programming to assist people in their daily lives. Next slide, please. So at Fatima House, it's a program that is located at 1059 College. It is a shelter that is providing services and shelter for women experiencing homelessness, often fleeing situations of violence or other issues in their life that have driven them to the street, and we would be providing that support service and immediate shelter assistance. We will be moving into the program in December and operating it in a 24/7 basis. As Brad said, this is a relocation of the program that currently exists at 86 Lombard. The program is also a pet-friendly program. In fact, Fred Victor was one of the first organizations in the shelter system to allow pets in, and pets provide an incredible emotional support for many of the residents across our program services, as well as the women who are currently in our shelter at 86 Lombard. Again, this is a program that will be operated by Fred Victor. We will be in a building that will be occupied on the second floor, third floor, and the lower level of that building, and sheltering 20 to 25 women. Ultimately, we'll be going up to 52 beds. It is a staffed 24/7 staff program, and one that, and I'll get into a little bit more around the programming services. In addition to the immediate emergency shelter, we'll be offering food services, meals, as well as clinical support, as well as trauma support, mental health support, harm reduction support as well for the women there. We will have, of those 24 staff positions in 24/7 operation, a dedicated staff who will be focused on community engagement, so liaising with our neighbors, and will be participating in this, Jane had mentioned, the Community Liaison Committee. I just want to point out that even though this is a shelter, an emergency shelter, housing and housing stability work will be happening on site. All our staff are trained in a model called Housing First, with a goal to working with all clients and residents of the building to find a permanent housing solution that works for that individual. When a person comes into into our program, they immediately start stabilization. What are the immediate needs of the people coming into that program, and then working on a housing solution that is ultimately all our goals, to find permanent and safe housing for all our clients in our shelter services. Next slide, please. Just to give a profile, if you will, of our residents, we have recognized, and Brad did indicate, a higher and increasing number, unfortunately, of people who are experiencing homelessness over the past number of years. even more so now during this time of COVID. The number of women growing who are homeless on the street has also grown somewhat to the point where not only the City of Toronto, but the federal government has recognized women to the point of 25% of any new housing that will be built, and affordable housing that would be built, would be identified for women identified people. As I mentioned earlier, the focus on the shelter programming that will take place in the building is ensuring immediate shelter, healthy meals, clothing, laundry facilities will be on site, and the important piece of providing hygiene and really a safe and inclusive environment for women escaping the street and finding a safe place inside. And all with a focus on providing counseling, mental health support, and in particular, as I mentioned, permanent housing or a permanent housing solution. Last year, just to give an indication, or this year, sorry, my fault, that we have housed in our current program at Lombard over 50 women into permanent housing. No mean feat when there is a lack of affordable housing in the immediate sense, but we work with a wide array of private sector landlords as well as public or nonprofit landlords to secure housing for the women that come into our program and into our shelter. Next slide, please. I just want to give an example, a face to the programming, if you will, of a woman who came into our program not too long ago. Her name is Hong, who was identified as homeless. She arrived at our hostel on Lombard Street with all basically her worldly possessions in a number of bags and her belongings. Her health was not in she was not in great shape in terms of her health. There were a number of issues that she was facing. She also needed access to identification, income support, as well as housing. And our staff, the staff at the shelter on Lombard, eventually found permanent housing, worked with Hong on securing her ID that she needed, and became a very active member of the community where she's living now, and in fact was an active member of the resident community that was living while she was living at the shelter. And we do work with many women like Hong who just needs a hand up, if you will, and that extra piece of support and moving and supporting her to move to more permanent and stable housing for her. Next slide, please. Thanks. I also want to talk a bit about the rights and responsibilities. We recognize, and I think it's important to say, that people do need a safe and inclusive place to be and to go. And our shelter, all our programs work towards that and to ensure that there's a safe place to go, and people have a right to that. With that, people staying at these locations, this location and our other sites, are equal citizens in the city and have the same rights and freedoms and responsibilities, in fact, as other residents. We have we do conduct expectations and rules, and we have, we could talk about this a little bit later, a contract that clients do sign when they enter into the program as part of the intake, that they are aware of the neighborhood that they are in, they're aware of expectations in the neighborhood, become familiar with the neighborhood, and that there are constant reminders of around behavior, if you will, around conduct within the neighborhood. We recognize that we are part of a neighborhood. We want to be part of a good neighborhood as well, and we see our residents as contributing in a positive way to the neighborhood. I do this through a number of ways, through individual counseling, individual case management, but also regular resident meetings to make sure people know the rules and policies and the guidelines. Housing workers, again, work closely with the residents. and residents commit to accepting the supports received from staff when agreeing to join a community or the shelter program. If someone is discharged from the program, they are given a referral to an appropriate shelter within the shelter system. They're not discharged to the street. They are discharged to another shelter, and a person is moved to that shelter immediately. Next slide, please. Finally, I want to talk about a bit about the site operations that over the coming weeks and over the number of months over the next year, as we begin opening our program at Fatima House, we will continue to work closely with the community, and particularly through our community engagement facilitator and the community, to plan a very successful integration of this program into the community that we're in. Fred Victor will provide housing supports, as I keep mentioning. Staff will work with residents to develop housing plans with the goal of securing affordable and permanent housing. We do have peer support, safety checks in and around the building, and education to prevent overdoses. And we do provide 3 nutritious meals and counseling services, and ensure that we are welcoming, to have a welcoming program in Fatima House, and that we take this approach with working with our neighbors in the community. We are open to a number of support services or ancillary support services to engage and animate the space that we are in, and also engage and work with our community neighbors, whether that's through social recreation programs like yoga or embroidery. I know we have a thriving knitting club at the women's hostel. As I mentioned earlier, there's laundry facilities on site, food, clothing, and then ongoing workshops and housing workshops, cultural celebrations that we recognize, and important work, and it often goes unnoticed, is around the referrals to ID clinics and settlement and employment services. As I mentioned earlier, we do have an employment training program close to downtown, and many of our clients across our programs in the City of Toronto use that service to get enhanced training and support around their resume, interview skill sets, and placement into into employment situations that are beneficial for them, for all. And again, we have partnerships that are health focused with mental health nursing. Will be coming on site through CAMH. We are negotiating with another organization around health services, and we have space on site that is outfitted as a clinic, and that clinic is only for the women in that program. We will not be taking clients elsewhere. It is a clinic specific to the women in the program. Next slide, please. I know a few people have asked around the Committee of Adjustment. This is a process that's will be underway shortly. The building does require a minor variance in the zoning bylaw to allow for a higher floor space index. And this FSI measures the size of the building relative to the size of the lot. And until this variance is granted, we cannot use the 3rd floor. When the shelter opens, we will be in the lower level, as I mentioned, than the 1st and 2nd floors. And the application, if the application for the variance is approved, then the existing 3rd floor will be used primarily for office space, some client space, and a couple client rooms. The site, I have to note, has already been zoned to permit a shelter. Application does not consider whether or not the site can be used as a shelter, as this is an already permitted use. The Committee of Adjustment hearing date has not been set yet, but those who are living within a 60-meter radius of the building will be given proper notice through the Committee of Adjustment, and I believe you can find out more information on the Committee of Adjustment website. Next slide, please.
I think that's it.
And I think that's it. And I welcome people to check out the website. We do have a video that we will play, I believe, at the end of the session today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Keith. And it's a really nice video that gives a sense. It gets you inside. It takes you inside the facility because, of course, an open house would have been planned as part of the engagement, but COVID is not going to allow that to happen. So people are certainly curious to get a little look inside. That video sort of tells the story of the person, the contractor, his inspiration for doing this, and some of the programming, the people, and the facility. So it's really nice. It's actually a little bit difficult to show on Webex, on multimedia sort of piece, but we're going to try at the end of the meeting. And if it works, great. You'll see the world premiere here. But if not, we didn't want to take up valuable time for discussion in showing it if it didn't work. Okay, just a couple of quick words here about the community engagement. Next slide, Suhal. The initiative around here, again, the objective is to support the successful integration of Fatima House into the neighborhood, public information sessions such as this, a virtual open house, community bulletins that the first one went out yesterday to people who had signed up for it. It's on the website. It'll be available. It's basically the FAQs, like things that people are curious about, and we'll keep adding to those, and additional information and updates as we get them. A community liaison committee is being formed and recruited. This is an advisory group made up of representatives from the community organizations, such as residents associations, BIAs, maybe some key social service providers, things like that, people that are very engaged and active in the community. So you would, if you're interested in being on the CLC, you're part of an organization, please reach out to us. On our website, our email, and so on. Get in touch with the counselor's office. They know how to reach us clearly. And this is the place where you'll be able to bring issues forward on behalf of your constituencies and neighbors, share information, and address community concerns, offer support. You'll meet regularly with Fred, Victor, and city representatives, and it meets about once a month. It will be convened for some time to come. Your membership on it is spelled out in duties and responsibilities in terms of reference. It's not a deciding board, but it's an advising body. And there will be, a very important part of this process is getting this CLC running. So we hope some people will step forward and are interested in being part of that. More information on this is at the website again, and there are always opportunities to get to us as the facilitation team through email and through phone numbers. That will be on a slide at the back. Again, it's on the project website, and it's all over the flyers you got. So next slide. That takes us to another reminder that indeed we are, in case you came late to the meeting, we are recording this session. Please don't share personal information because it will be on a website. It is all public. Again, we usually get a heads up if there's some media in the room, but we haven't had to date. But it's a good general rule of thumb at a public meeting to act that everything you say is public, and it is. So it could even potentially be quoted in a newspaper or on a media source. So please just know that, and we welcome your input. And public process is really critical to the democracy we're living in. So bring it. We're all excited to hear from you, and we're basically now ready to go. Next slide, a little overview on how to ask questions. Now, we're going to leave this slide up, okay? If you're on a laptop, you can see some faces up top. The key people here, Keith and Brad, are the people who you'd be addressing questions to largely. The chat function is in the bottom, at the bottom of the video window, and you select Q&A. And you type in your question in the lower right hand of your screen, and you click send. We currently don't have any questions, so it's a really good time if you want to get a question in or you want to talk. Okay, we now have a Q&A, but just to refresh, you can also ask your question out loud. by connecting your audio, following the instructions there. I'm not going to read them out. If you're dialing in, you can see that there is a code for just if you're on audio on your phone, and there's an access code, and then you press 3 to raise and lower your hand, and that will get you in the speakers lineup. So we're going to go now. If you have any, you can also type in questions in the Q&A. Go, I explain it. I'm a bit lost here. We'll do our best. It's a limited medium, as you can see, but we're here and we're giving it a whirl. So someone's figured out the Q&A here. So we have a question that asks a very good question, sort of from the zoning and planning perspective. So Keith, someone here wants to know why the shelter was built before the variance was issued, and is that a common thing in the city? So can you sort of explain how a variance came into play here and the sequencing of it?
Sure, I could try to anyway.
Okay.
I think because it is a minor variance on the floor space use, I think we were under the assumption that we could do that. Subsequent meetings with the city and certainly with the landlord, the owner of the building, revealed that we had to, or he had to, make application to a committee of adjustment for that use, or for the land space or the floor space use on that third floor. We were under assumption it was a use before. I think it was a convalescent home for a number of years in the past, but we were under that assumption. We felt that it was an excellent location. The building had good bones to it. We had worked with this particular developer in the past on another project that he assisted in. It's a transitional housing program for older women, of which he was very generous in developing that site, and we had faith that he would be doing that. So that is the reason for it. We perceive this to be just hopefully a minor technical issue that we can overcome. It does not take away from the fact that it is the use of the space is permitted under the zoning.
And to clarify, Keith, in your presentation, you're also saying that this concerns the usages on the third floor, which are administrative and offices?
There are administration offices. There are meeting room, a larger meeting room on that floor. I believe there are 2 rooms on that floor, resident rooms. Okay. As well as an outdoor space.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, we have some people with their hands up. Melissa, you have your hand up, and you are now unmuted. So hopefully, can you say hello?
Hello.
There you go. We're hearing you.
So I just wanted to say, first off, I'm really happy that this shelter is moving into the neighborhood. I live a couple blocks away, and I think it's going to be a really great, important addition to the neighborhood. So thank you, Fred Victor, for bringing us this great service. I just have a couple of questions that are a little indirect. So the first one is, I know that the city was looking for additional shelter sites for quite a while. And I know this building was for sale for quite a while, and I've learned that Fred Victor is renting the building rather than it having been purchased, and I'm wondering why that happened. And then my other question was about the Lombard site. Mm-hmm. We obviously need more spaces, like there are people living in parks, and the shelter system is like at capacity, and so I'm wondering whether for the winter, I know the city has a plan to convert existing shelter spaces that are underused into supportive housing, but I'm wondering whether Lombard Street can be used as shelter space over the winter for people until that happens.
Sure. I'll try to tackle your first question. We have worked, as I mentioned earlier, we have worked with this developer in the past. We asked him to look for us, if you will, a site that worked for not only work for him, but also work for us in terms of location. Brad outlined sort of the criteria that have to fit that. We chose to do the leasing option versus the purchase of it as a more efficient way of doing that work. And it did require extensive renovation inside to make it livable, if you will, for the women who would be going in there, but also meet the shelter standards that are currently out there. The Lombard site itself, our long-term plan for that site is to look for permanent housing on that site. We have an opportunity to perhaps make that happen. That's part of the motivation of locating the program elsewhere. But it's really the intent to look at permanent housing on that site. In the short term, I take your point around the need for shelter, emergency shelter space in the winter. I don't want to put the city on the spot, but we are, and I think we made it clear to the city, we're open to using that space in the meantime if that is required.
Okay. Thank you, Keith. We have another person here with their hand up. Mary Lou, I'm just going to take you off mute there. Mary Lou, say hello. Let's see if we can hear you. Yeah, should be good now. Mary Lou? You want to maybe, if you can, if you're on the computer, press and unpress the mute button. Just click it on and off. See if that helps. There, you should be good. Oh, I saw the little green microphone.
Okay. Are we good?
We're good. Is that Mary Lou?
It is.
Hey, fabulous. Thank you. Hey, Keith. You know what, Keith? You're doing a great job. But, if we could see your face a little bit more.
Yeah. I'm
a little bit more light. There you go.
I've been moving it around all day to get the.
It's like a kind of nice Halloween kind of vibe you had going there,
sure,
but that's way better. That's nice.
Okay, sorry about that.
Okay, cool. Mary Lou, please.
Great. So thank you. So to introduce myself, I'm the Director of Partnership and Admin at St. Anne's Anglican Church. So we're at the bottom of Gladstone there. We're super delighted that Fatima House is in the neighborhood and want to say welcome.
Thank you.
Two quick questions, one of which I put in the chat, but I'm not sure if you saw it. So it's a practical question. With so many programs and resources available online to folks, will the residents of Fatima House have access to iPads, tablets, computers, whatever they need to participate? So that's my first question.
Sure. We do have access, or certainly access for clients or residents. There's a common computer. Denise Nee is our senior manager for the site there. I may throw to her for some specifics, but we make every attempt to have computer or tech access to clients. To give you an example, during COVID that we went through, a lot of our clients, particularly those in housing and in transitional programs and some in shelters, required a tablet to remain connected. As you know, people were isolating or had to isolate themselves, not so much because they had COVID, but just because that's the way things were, and to connect with their support workers. We worked with a number of our program donors and private sector donors, and we managed to secure, I think, over 100 tablets for our clients. And I believe a few of them went to the current residents of the shelter now. We would try to make every effort to make those available. We'll have common computers available for clients at the site itself.
Excellent. Thank you, Keith. We're going to the chat now where we have a few questions in a row there. I'm going to ask on behalf of Matthew, do residents have access to the space in the shelter during the day, or do all residents leave for the day and return to seek shelter in the evening? Great question, Matthew.
Thank you, Matthew. There's no requirement to leave the shelter at all. In fact, as we are in COVID, we encourage people to stay. We will be having lots of programming. We currently have lots of programming happening on site, but there is no requirement, like people are not asked to move out at 9 o'clock or after breakfast or come back at 4 o'clock. However, people may have other things to do in their life. As I said, we try to connect people to other supports that may be in the community or other clinical supports, and they have doctor's appointments, so that would require them leaving the site, obviously, as well as appointments to actually see housing, which is a great thing to do. And also there may be other appointments that they may have, but there's no requirement from the program standpoint that people have to leave.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Keith. Okay, I'm going to read a comment from Dominic. It says, hi, as a neighbor, I'm delighted that a women's shelter is part of the neighborhood. We want to welcome you to this vibrant neighborhood. My question is are children allowed in the shelter?
So we do not allow children in. It's for adult women who are 16 years of age or older. And thank you for the welcome, Dominic. I appreciate that. But at this point, this program is specifically for adult women. Okay.
Okay. Keith, you're doing a great job here. So it's rapid fire session, as you can see. Khadija is asking, what COVID adjustments are you planning to put in this space for residents, considering outbreaks are high risk at shelters?
Yeah.
See, it's the theme. Everyone wants to be safe. Great question, Khadija.
Absolutely, and safety is predominant in our minds as well. So I'll just give, Fatima, I'll just give you a bit of what's happening currently in our shelters, and this is across the board at Fred Victor, not just at our Lombard shelter, but in our housing, in our other transitional programs, and other programs that we operate across the city, that we have screening taking place at the front entrance, if you will, or near the front door. All participants or residents are screened on a regular and, in fact, daily basis. And I may throw it to Denise if it's more than that in a day. We do ask and require residents to be masked while they're inside. Staff are mandated to be masked inside. So we've taken precautions already. These precautions will carry with us over to Fatima House. That screening will take place every day. And also when a person leaves the program for the day or has an appointment, when they come back, they are also screened. And there are a number of questions that we ask, as well as a temperature check for each person. And those things are documented.
Okay, great. Okay. Moving down the Q&A again, we have a comment from Joe. Joe firstly says, I'd like to welcome the women of Fatima House to the neighborhood. Thank you, Joe. Joe asked the question about women staying at Fatima House, whether they need to vacate during the day. You've answered that, Keith, that no, they can stay in their rooms and do services and come and go as they need and want. But the second part of Joe's question concerns their security. What sort of security is being provided for women who are fleeing violence and who are at the shelter?
Yeah, as I mentioned, the biggest security we have is the fact that it's a 24/7 operation. Staff are trained not only in hostel services, but also trained around issues of violence, domestic violence, trauma, and work diligently with the women on issues that may come up in their case management, which would include histories of violence or experiencing violence or fleeing violence. We will have security cameras there. We're well aware of and aware of the environment around us, certainly at Lombard now, and we will be at Gladstone. And Denise, if you don't mind, Jane, I might throw this one to Denise. There may be more detail that could be provided.
Yeah. Denise, just identify who you are, Denise.
Hi, everyone. My name is Denise Nee, and I am the Senior Manager of the Fatima House program. And I would add that we are not a violence against women's shelter. And while we will do everything we can to protect women if they come to our door, we will also do our very best to try to refer out to a violence against women shelter when needed and when possible, because at those places they have heightened security. They have closer connection with the police, and they are able to offer, enhanced trauma supports that we just don't have. But we will do everything in our power when they come to our door to provide safety, to provide a bed until we figure out, what is actually needed for the particular woman.
Great. Okay.
I think Brad wants to speak as well, noticing his hand up.
Brad, there you go.
Yeah, thank you. The one small piece that I wanted to add is that we do have a requirement in our shelter standards that access to all of our shelter locations is controlled. So the front door is always locked, and people need to buzz to get in. So in terms of security, I think that's probably an important one to identify as well.
That's right. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I guess I would add also to that is that once you come in through the front door, you are in another sort of locked area in a vestibule. So the women will speak to the staff first so they can do an assessment and figure out what's going on before coming into sort of the fullness of the house.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, just a little update on the tech side here. I'm coming back in one more question to the someone who will be asking by voice a question. We do have more Q&A. There's about 55 participants on now, which is great. If you are asking a question, it'd be great to make sure you try to send it to all as opposed to just me, because it helps us to be able to see and triage the questions. But so little update there. But picking up on this theme perhaps of the security, there is a question here from Sean, who first says, welcome to the neighborhood, Fred Victor, or glad you're here. Sean says, I just have a question about the fencing. It's quite elaborate and dominates the sidewalk and corner. Was there a reason for it being so ... intense? Aesthetically,
there was a reason
it's the less appealing part of the nice reno. Legit, we've had some really nice comments. People loving the way the building's coming together, the copper roof. So yeah, why the fence? Who's making those decisions? What's up?
That's right. I think this was a decision made by the landlord, the developer, to put that fencing up. It is a bit high, but it's you can see through it. There's a bit of a privacy piece to it. At the risk of not talking to Denise about it, but I think there may be opportunities to put some more softening pieces like vines or growth around that fencing to make it less obtrusive, if you will.
It's a great question, and I think that also when we get these questions, I think that underneath it is really some input around it. I mean, there is an opinion on it, but it is a contribution. It's in the fabric of the neighborhood, and so it's noted, and it may be something that we hear about again.
Yes.
So thank you. Let's go back to ask Lori Cullen on the verbal side. Lori, you had your hand up there. You should be unmuted if you click your mute and unmute button. Let's see.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. Thanks, Lori.
Hi. I'm just wondering if there's any, I did type it in there, if there's any outdoor space for the women.
There's a small outdoor, I think it runs the side of the building, I believe, for a smoking area. We're conscious of the neighborhood, frankly, any building. We want to ensure that habits such as smoking and that sort of thing are available to the women, but not in a way that's out on the sidewalk, not in the front of the building, but it's onto the side. There is an outdoor space that would be on the third floor. That's a decking area, if you will, that we have great plans for community meals, basically a chill space that takes people out of the building, but still remain in the building, if you will, as an outside deck.
Okay. Can I ask another question?
Sure. That was a short one. Go for it, Laura. You were waiting quite a while there.
I'm just curious. I'm not too familiar with Fred Victor, but is there like a religious mandate? I noticed that there was a picture on the front door of maybe Mary or something. And specifically, if I could be candid, if there's some sort of pro-life mandate or something like that.
No. Short answer, no. I believe that may have been. I don't think it's there anymore, to my knowledge, but. Just the name, just a bit of a history on the name of the building and the house there. The owner developer, just to give a bit of a backstory on the name, his mother it was named Fatima, and all along he wanted to dedicate the building and his work to his mother, who sadly, unfortunately, passed away in December. And she was, my understanding, a fairly devout woman living in Iran, and they were very close. And then, not to go too far into the personal piece, unfortunately, the developer could not return to Iran to say goodbye to her. So that is why it's named Fatima House. I believe the picture, if you will, has been taken off. Fred Victor, though associated with the United Church, is a fairly open organization. We pride ourselves on working with all folks and all people. We do not take a religious stand in the way that you're asking.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay, we're going to go back to the Q&A. Thank you for that, Lori. Also, well, I've got the mic here. Melissa, your hand is still up. I'm not sure if you have a second question. If you don't, we'll take your, you can unraise your hand. But we'll also go through the people on the question list that we have for now. There are a few waiting. But also know that if we don't happen to get your question, we are taking a feed of all the questions we've asked all of them to date. So I think we're fine. But if for some reason we miss your question, we'll be examining it, considering it as feedback, and trying to get you answers in bulletins and on the website and so on. Anyway, thank you, Lori, for that question about the religious affiliation. That's very important, I believe, as well, to know what kind of organization you're working with in your community. So someone is asking here, how do you pick people to be in the program? Maybe Keith and Denise? Sort of a similar question, and what happens when someone doesn't pass the screening? So how's the selection work?
Sure, I'm going to throw that to Denise, because that's an everyday thing that we have in terms of the intake process.
So we don't pick and choose the women who can come into our shelter, as we are an emergency shelter. A woman who identifies as female is welcome if we have a space available, as long as they are over 16 years of age. And I think the second question was about the screening. So if somebody does not pass the screening, then we do have, we will set up a way for the person to go get tested for COVID. And there is a whole process that is set up for that. If we can call for a specific ride for them to be transported to a test center, and then they do not return to the shelter until they have a negative response. So if there is a length of time that they have to wait for that result to come back, they will be then sent to an isolation center, and we will hold their bed for them. And when their result returns negative, which every single result that we've had so far in this year has been negative, then they are able to return to shelter. If their test result becomes positive, they would stay in the isolation center, and then we would not hold their bed for that length of period of time. However, they would be referred either back to us if we have a bed available, or to another shelter where there is a space available for them once they are ready to return.
Just want to comment, Jane, thanks, Denise, on the testing and positive tests and that sort of thing. And just to let folks know, since the COVID began really in March, Fred Victor, in terms of clients, and as I said earlier, we see probably about 2,000 clients every day. We've only had 12 people identified as testing positive throughout this whatever number of months now that we're in it. So I don't want to tempt fate by saying that, but I think we have a very robust screening process, as well as internally in terms of the program spaces of masking, distancing, and following the public health guidelines, as well as from the City of Toronto.
Thank you. Okay, there's definitely some questions coming in about, we'll get to quickly, but I think this is one I can answer really quickly. There was an inquiry about the community engagement position and the work that will be done to support Fatima House in the community. I'd like to say that you should be in touch with us on email, and we will connect you directly with the Fred Victor staff to, learn if there's some postings going up of any sort. I'm assuming that's a different question than the Community Liaison Committee, which is, of course, a volunteer position. But the person asking this, Brittany, if you could email us, we can direct you to people in Fred Victor to keep you on a list if you're interested about if a position does come up. So I want to move on to another couple of questions we're getting. Duncan is asking a question I think that's probably a few people have emailed about us already, which is how Fatima House is going to interact with Sistering up on Bloor Street. Is there how are those two organizations going to differ and work together? How do they offer services in mesh or not? Let's just kind of talk about what's the relationship there. How do they work together? Thank you, Duncan.
Thank you, Duncan. We have I think a long-standing relationship, if you will, partnership where with Sistering, we have collaborated on a few projects in the past. We, I think, worked together at our women's drop-in here downtown on Adelaide Street. We often probably will have the same women, perhaps, I'm not sure, but I think we would work collaboratively and work positively with Sistering, and we often work with them on other issues, whether it's poverty issues or access safe and accessible services for women across the City of Toronto. Denise, did you want to add anything to there? I'm not sure if our shelter currently has, we often work with them in the sector for sure.
Yeah, we definitely do work with them in the sector, and I know that I will be reaching out for sure to see what we can do together. I would say that Sistering is a drop-in. They are not a shelter. Mm-hmm. And so with that, our services are different. I'm sure that some of our women may access services that they may have that we don't, and they will be able to refer women to us for shelter and housing supports. And so I'm sure that we'll work together well.
Okay, thank you. Also, we should say that Sistering has put themselves forward as being very interested in sitting on the Community Liaison Committee, which I believe we would welcome, as it's an organization in the neighborhood doing similar work and would be part of a great integration effort. So there is a built-in relationship there already, which bodes well for that process. I'm a little bit of a pedestrian kind of person. I used to work for this organization called Jane's Walk, so I'm really excited about the next question because I can geek out on pedestrian stuff, and I always know people want to know this stuff. Janet is asking, has there been any consideration given to changing the button-activated crosswalk to a timed crosswalk to accommodate any anticipated increase in foot traffic at the College Glassstone intersection? Now, that looks like a city kind of question, and it might be out of scope for SSHA, but why don't we bring on Brad? Brad, on behalf of the city, what can you say about foot traffic, accommodating people, pedestrians, keeping the streets?
Unfortunately, my first question of the night is one that I'm not going to be able to provide a whole bunch of solid, concrete information about. But it's certainly something that we could make note of and bring it back and see if there's a way we can explore that suggestion a little bit further. So
I assume what's meant is, as a button activated crosswalk that just clicks and clicks, as opposed to a pedestrian countdown, sort of more like a stoplight kind of mechanism. Janet, if you have any additional things to type into the chat, we can log it as feedback and a question. We can try to get you answers about that as well.
Sorry, Janet.
The traffic light apparently is brand new, but anyway, please clarify if we haven't got this right, and we'll try to get you answers. Okay, GD is asking about concerned about noise at night. Wants to know if it'll be quiet. Concerned about discarded needles. What's the staff going to do to prevent things like this? Thanks. Good question.
GD. So certainly noise at night, again, I go back to we're conscious of the neighborhood we're in. We're in a neighborhood, and we need to act as good neighbors as well. The staff, as I said, is 24/7 on site. I think they will react very quickly if there's noise that is after hours, if you will, or obtrusive noise in the neighborhood. Our staff would be on that fairly quickly. In terms of needles in the neighborhood, we need to look at what that means for staff to be collecting needles around the building. I think we take safety, and safety includes collecting those needles if they do appear to us. There are, I think, through public health, if you do find a needle, there's a number, I don't have it on me at the moment, that you should be calling if there's a needle that is found. Denise, do you want to add anything else to that? Sorry.
No, I would agree that there will be three staff on every shift, and more during the day and evening as there's overlap with case managers and management. And, they're quick and they're ready to, they're paying attention at all times, and they know our women. And I would say that it is part of our community relations contract that we have everybody sign, and we do walk through each person with that and remind them that what the expectations are to be a part of the community, not just to stay with us. But we want people to be a part of the community, and doing that is respecting the community and our neighbors.
Denise?
Yes?
I'm just wondering, is Fatima House going to have a curfew?
Fatima House will have a curfew. We currently do have a curfew of 11 p.m., and that is not going to change when we move to our new site. So our women are expected to be in by 11, and staff do constant rounds during their shifts, all shifts, just to make sure that everything is good and everything is safe. They do go in and out of rooms, and they check on people. And if we know of somebody who's a little bit more high risk, we check on them a little bit more. We know our women, and we have a long-standing staff group who have dedicated their time to our current site, some for 20 years. So they really have gotten to know the people and the people in the community, and they're really excited to get to know the people in this community and see how we can work together.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, a couple more questions here. We're going to get this one done now from Robin. Robin says, welcome to the women and staff of Fatima House. Happy to have you as part of our neighborhood. Glad to hear about the plan for a community liaison committee. Will there also be a role for individuals, not just organizations, to support the Fatima House as volunteers, for example? Great question. Keith, Denise?
Yep. As always, we welcome volunteers and volunteer activity to work with the community that we serve. And there will be opportunities. We do have a very robust volunteer program within the organization. And I think as we start rolling out pieces of our work and the community liaison committee, we'll have a contact number and a contact person for people who want to volunteer, or even volunteer doing programming or engagement with the women there. Absolutely, we would welcome that across the.
And indeed, there have been offers through the email address, which I should give again. It's not on that slide in front of you, but it is clc.1059college@gmail.com. That's where you can send any kind of comments or questions. Offers of support have come in. People have done things like asked if they can help put together welcome baskets, or they're just interested to know generally how they can help support it, which is great. It's appreciated from.
We were heartened to hear about, as Jane mentioned, a couple individuals who want to do the welcome kits to the women once they move in December. So it's amazing and humbling gesture, I think.
Okay, I just want to go back to the CLC as a topic. Just a sec. Someone here is asking, Mary Lou is asking, if someone from the Cadbury factory has been invited to join the CLC. We are in the process of extending invitations. It is not over. We want to, I think that they're definitely on the list of people we'd like to have. So I'm going to take that as something you'd like to have happen, Mary Lou. Otherwise, please type in another chat question. But yes, at this point, there is certainly a plan to include them. Hopefully, they'll be up for that. I'd like to now go to this question. Lori is asking a little bit more about the rooms and the building itself. Again, it would be great if you could stick around. If their video does work, you can get a sense of the inside of the building. But Lori is asking questions like, how big are the rooms? Do they have shared bathrooms? Are all the lights left on all night? Evidently, they are at this time. And Lori was kind of looking in and seeing they seem small. You know, trying to figure out how you would have 52 rooms in that building. Just general curiosity, what's it look like inside? So there is a video, and it will be available on our, I know the counselor team is going to be tweeting it out on social tomorrow. It'll be on the Fred Victor, you'll be able to link to the Fred Victor site to get to it from our site. But Keith, can you tell us a little bit more, describe the rooms and bathrooms?
So the rooms themselves, yes, they're kind of small. There will be some rooms that will double up. There may be two people in a room, but that is an improvement, if you will, over our current location. And part of our desire, and certainly the city's desire, is to have more livable situations. So we do have a number, and I can't remember it off the top of my head, a number of single rooms of which each person has their own bathroom. The dignity of having one's own bathroom is vitally important. Whenever we've talked to people who live in our shelters, whether it's at Lombard or the North End in Caledonia, the issue of access to one's own bathroom is vitally important for privacy's sake, for storage, that sort of thing. They are small rooms, but they do fit in that space. And there will be a few that will be with two people in that room. But at the same time, we also have 3 to 4 what we call accessible rooms for people with mobility issues as well. I'm sure Denise can talk about the light situation. We do have lights out types of time.
The lights in the hallway.
That's always a wonderful thing.
Well, the lights in the hallway will be on at all times, but the lights in the rooms will not be on at all times, obviously, because the women will have their own. They can access that. They can turn it on and off as they wish. As well, there are some rooms, if you're looking in through the windows sort of on the main floor, those will all be individual rooms. They will not be shared. The women that we foresee with some higher needs, we put them closest to the staff. And so all of those rooms, to begin with, well, a good portion of those rooms to begin with will be staff offices because we don't currently have access to the third floor. So because of that, we will be using a few more of the rooms on the first floor. And then the remainder of the rooms, and eventually all of the rooms on the first floor, will be all single rooms. They won't be doubled up at all. And then there are some larger rooms on the second floor that we're able to double up.
I think that people, that question also about the lighting might have been about why the light's on now. So maybe we'll take it as a bit of advice that it might be nice to turn off the lights, if even to just save energy, birds flying into them, whatever it is. We'll pass that along.
Pass it on, yeah.
You'll pass that along to the contractor?
Sure.
Jane,
all right.
Jane, I just wanted to add just a little piece about how much of an improvement Fatima House is over the existing property on Lombard, which certainly was not purpose built. I actually believe it's the old city morgue from way back in the day. So that has been renovated 1,000 times and kind of cobbled together for this purpose. So the fact that we're able to that Fred Victor has been able to grab hold of this location, which is much more purpose-built and way more dignified in so many different ways, I think is a huge advantage for the women and generally a huge advantage for our shelter system as a whole.
Right. Quick question from Khadija. Will you have culturally sensitive mental health counselors for non-English speaking residents? Denise or Keith?
Denise, did you?
Yes. I can answer that very quickly. Yes, we will. We have a large variety of programs within Fred Victor, and we are literally an email away from reaching out to saying we are looking for support when it comes to this culture, this language, and we often get multiple responses saying, I can help you. Let me know if you need me there in person or if we can do this via phone, and we will get things sorted out. And so I love that. I love that we cross multiple cultures. And so, yeah, we're just a hand and or a phone call or an email away from reaching out to people and saying, you know, we're looking for this specific support, and people raising their hands and jumping in to help.
Okay, great. Arella is asking about how, you know, sort of how this facility can really help directly with the community. So she's asking if there's a way for neighbors to engage with the space. Is it off limits to the neighborhood? Will there be engagements will there be space inside this building? Is there some way the community can use the facility? Keith?
Yeah, sure, and I think that's an excellent question, Arella, and we had that in mind in terms of some of the space. It may be it is a nice building. It's a big building, but it's not a vast building either. But I think this is a good question for the CLC on determining what is a good use of common area space in the building. We will have a dining area that obviously will be used during dining periods. The third floor does have a larger meeting room space. So we anticipate working with the neighborhood around access. We're not sure what that looks like at this point, and that may be a good discussion at a future CLC meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all know it's meeting space is at a premium in communities. So yeah, could be a way.
I think as we have those discussions, we're very open to figuring out what is helpful for the community, what is a community benefit, if you will, or enhancement in that way.
Okay. I'm going to pick up on another comment that followed from GD's inquiry about quiet at night, you know, discarded needles and so on. GD also wrote in and said, you know, I'm still concerned even though there was that answer, but maybe I could pivot to a question that asks this really quite directly, which is quite literally, I think, you know, people want to know whether there's going to be a safe injection site at this shelter. I know that you sort of touched on this in the presentation, but, you know, not everyone saw the presentation. Can you please answer, Keith, and clarify if it's a safe injection site?
very clear way, one word answer is no. It's not a safe injection site. It's not set up for a safe injection site. We do acknowledge that people who do use may be coming into the site, but we do not permit use on site at all. And part of the staff role is to work with the clients, the women who are coming into the site, to find alternative places, but also in the context of our neighborhood and our neighborhood relations and responsibilities. Denise, did you want to add anything else to that?
No, I think you covered it. Good job.
You know, I think we're kind of rounding the corner. Oh, to use a very bad phrase these days. It's too Trumpian. But there are no other questions on the Q&A right now. So please, if you're holding back because you think it's a big long line, rush in there. Maybe in the interim, Denise, could you tell us, you know, how long people will live at the shelter, and where would they go after? What's a typical sort of span of time?
So generally, it would start with about 90 days. In that 90 days, they would meet with a case manager one-on-one, and they create a plan. So what are their goals? Housing is always our top priority, and so that's everyone's number one goal. And then we figure out what are the other goals. Is employment or any sort of, you know, funding? What does that look like for each individual person? Is it mental health related? Is it addiction related? And then finding the proper resources for that, all the while making sure that that housing piece is being connected to. So the case managers will meet with the clients at least once a month, sometimes more, and oftentimes it's more, to really make sure those goals are being met. And as well, our frontline staff follow up on those goals. They see all of the notes that are being made on each individual woman, and they're able to make sure that those goals are being met. They're able to assist with that because they have their own set of skills. And they really work towards the housing piece. Now, that doesn't mean at 90 days they're asked to leave. If everybody's engaging in a plan, then they can stay longer, because we all know that affordable housing is at a premium and really hard to find. So, but I would say that Keith did mention that in this year we have housed 50 plus women, and in a year that has been as crazy as this one has, I think that is not a small feat for our two case managers. So they have really gotten to know the community, and they get to know each individual person so well that they are able to pinpoint what that particular woman needs. And so for some, that may mean staying with us for 6 months, 9 months. But for some, that could mean that they are housed within 90 days. That would ultimately be our goal, but we're well aware that that doesn't happen often.
Okay. Excellent. All right. I'm going to go back to the raised hands. I'm seeing, Melissa, that you have your hand up. So I've unmuted you. I'm not sure if you do have another comment or question.
I do. I'm just wondering about the not allowing women to use substances on site. Because it strikes me that it would actually be safer for both women and for the neighborhood if women were allowed to use them on site, and not have to find somewhere else. I don't know where else they would go, especially during COVID, where that would be safe for everybody. I mean, you'd prevent needles from being scattered around the neighborhood, and women would feel more comfortable at home. So I'm wondering about that.
Sure. I think it's an interesting question and dilemma that we have. I understand certainly where you're coming from around the safety of using in-house or in the site itself. But I think at this point we've made that decision. This was, I think, thought out both by staff, but also residents at the time when this decision was made a number of years ago, I think, around no usage on site. So.
Okay.
I don't know if, Denise, if you want to add anything else to that.
I would say that we haven't had a long history of substance abusers or substance users on our site. And I'm not saying we haven't had any who don't use, but we have had a few, but it's not something that we've seen a lot. And that is probably why the decision was made. And, you know, maybe that's something that we can talk to the city about and go in a different direction if we need to. But right now, the decision stands that there will be no use on site. We do provide harm reduction supplies if needed, and we will assist people in getting to a safe injection site if they need to, you know, if that's what they need to. We come up with harm reduction plans for people. So if it means that, you know, they're potentially later for curfew because they're at a safe injection site and have to get to us after closing, then we work with that. We want to work with them where they're at. And so we have those conversations to see where each individual woman is at in that respect. But again, we haven't had a long history of substance users.
Thank you. There's a question here from Katie, who's wondering about the shelter operations in a very specific way. Katie is asking if the staff are unionized, and will the 3 staff be in charge of the programs? Did you bring others in? How does that work?
So we are a union shop. We've been, I think, a union shop for the past 7 years, I think. We have management on site, as Denise has mentioned, and frontline or bargaining unit staff conducting the day-to-day work. We also have access to who we call agency staff. If we cannot fill a shift through relief or other means, that we have access to a company that would fill a shift if we need to in an emergency situation, or bump up if there's an emergency situation.
I would also add to that that we do have on-call management support 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So there's always a manager who's just a phone call away.
Okay. There's a question from Arella about, Arella's a set of ears in the community there and eyes, and is wondering, she says people have been asking what happened to the men who lived in the building before. Was it a halfway house? Just sort of, do you have any update for the community on that end? I know that was sort of the before time, but
yep.
Just curious.
My understanding, when the developer bought the property, it was already empty, but I'm not aware of what it was like a year ago, or a couple of years ago. I've heard things that there may have been people squatting in there, and it was a prior use, I think, a convalescent home, but I think that was way back a number of years ago. But I think when he got it, it was already empty as far as I know.
Okay. Heather is wondering about the transition, the bringing of the clients from the current location to this location. Heather writes, it may be very disruptive to move your current clients almost 6 kilometers from their current home, not to mention staff. I'm sure that your staff knows how to manage change for the clients, but what reactions are you getting now from the existing clients that you have at Fatima House?
Denise, you're close.
I can answer that. Yeah. They are excited. I can tell you that. This has been so long in the making. So there's been talk of a move, of a new location for quite some time. So now that it's coming into fruition, the staff are extremely excited, but so are the clients. So we've been having these conversations with them daily. We let them know what's going on. I give them as much information as I possibly can. And in our resident meetings, which are a lot smaller now, we have to do multiple resident meetings because we don't allow for so many people in one space. But they're asking questions, and they're excited for the move. They're excited to have space that they could potentially call their own for a little while. So we are coming from dorm-style settings, and every person that we move into Fatima House will have their own room to start because we're starting on a smaller scale. So we're only moving between 21 and 25 people to start because of the social distancing. And so for that, they're going to have their own little space for a little while, where a few of them are still sharing. And we already talked about how much dignity comes along with having your own washroom. And so they're pretty excited.
Okay. Thank you. I just want to say we've got about 20 minutes left. We're going to have some wrap-up remarks. Watch the video. So it's great. We've got some more questions in. Thank you. I should mention, too, if you're only on the phone, you don't have a smartphone or a computer, and you want to raise your hand, you press *3. All right? So we'll try to get to everything. But, again, if we don't get to all the questions and the raised hands now, we will incorporate that into our FAQs and ongoing engagement and feedback and gathering it. So here's a question from Mary Lou, who wants to know if you can tell us if women from the Indigenous community will live at Fatima House. I ask because St. Anne's sometimes hosts cultural programs for Indigenous women in partnership with the Niwin Wendanmak. Sorry if I didn't pronounce that perfectly, but Four Winds Indigenous Health Program. Any?
Absolutely. Again, Denise talked about how women come into the program, but Mary Lou, I think if you're open to having your number go through Jane, we'd love to follow up with you.
Okay. All right. Just checking on the participants. Okay. There are, sorry about that. It's all going smoothly there. Just a few windows to open. I think we're kind of caught up here. I'm going to actually, maybe we should play the video. Let's try to play the video. And if there's another question after that, we'll try to get to it. But the clock is running down a little bit. So, Suhal, could you, I think Suhal's going to try, Suhal's helping us on the tech end. If you can try to fire up that video, it'd be great to have a look if we can. It's only 3 minutes. Bit of a drum roll because this is the world premiere.
Absolutely.
Available now streaming on Netflix. Let's go inside. All right. Thank you. Okay, team. That was technically challenging, but a really nice little look inside. It's obviously very glitchy. The technology with Webex isn't really good for video, so thanks for persisting. If you did stick around to watch it, you get the general idea. You saw inside a little bit. And I think we're all, we're wrapped for now on your feedback and questions. We're caught up, so I'm going to go to the counselor for some closing remarks. Keith, Denise, and Brad, thank you very much. Again, we'll be continuing to collect your feedback through all the mechanisms that you'll see on the website. But over to you, Councillor Bailau, for a few closing remarks and observations.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane, and thank you, Keith, Brad, and everybody that was on the call, and all the residents that participated. I also want to thank Merritt Stiles, our MPP. I'm not sure if she's still on the call, but we were texting back and forth, and I know that she was here for most of the meeting. So thanks, Merritt, for joining us on the call and listening to the questions and the residents and learning more about the project. Just yesterday, we actually approved at City Council our winter plan, but also for a second time, basically, a plan that really calls for a bigger investment in supportive housing. We know that the answer for homelessness is a supportive housing. We know that we live in a city where our shelter system is acting as the factor housing for hundreds of people. And as we could hear from Denise, I wish it could be 90 days, but sometimes it takes a lot longer. I wish, affordable housing is at a premium, supportive housing is at a premium. So I think there is an effort and a commitment and a knowledge that the solution is housing. But we know that we also need to have a strong shelter system to act as it's supposed to act, which is an emergency system. But we're always going to have space for a shelter system. And I think that what we saw with these images, what we saw being done with this shelter is actually the shelter system that we want to have, which is to provide dignity to people that at a certain point in time fall into homeless, but that we can provide that hand up with dignity, with the dignity that we saw here through these images and through the support services that will be available. And that quickly, hopefully quickly, we are able to transition into permanent housing. But while they are looking for that permanent housing, while we are working with them on many of the issues that they might have to make sure that that housing is successful and is stable, that they have a place that they can call home for that time that is dignifying. And I think that's what we saw in here. And I want to thank Fred Victor. I know that the owner of the building, this is very much a labor of love for him, and he's been very persistent in making sure that this was what he wanted, and he even without a lease signed until very recently, his mind was made that this was going to be what it was going to be. It's going to be a shelter, and he was committed to it, and he did it all the way through. And so I do want to thank the residents as well. I think there was a lot of extremely good questions in here, valid questions, but what I sensed as well is that is a lot of goodwill and really a sense of openness to welcome the shelter in the community. And the shelter has organizations that they will be working with. They will be working, obviously, with Sistering. And as they were saying, actually, Sistering is a drop-in center. So a lot of people think that Sistering is a shelter, not understanding there's not one single bed. And that, yes, a lot of people actually end up spending the night there because our system is so full. And actually, one of the places where Sistering would refer clients when they're ready to be in a shelter would be Fred Victor. And so there is a relationship that exists already. We also have several supportive housing organizations in the community as well that and private landlords that have relationships with organizations such as the Fred Victor to provide the permanent housing. And so this relationship will continue. This is part of the housing spectrum, and I'm just really pleased to see the commitment, the effort, the labor of love that was put into this project, and I think that is something that our community can be very proud of. And I think that the next few months, with our engagement, I think we're going to embrace this project and embrace our new neighbors in this community. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, just to wrap it up here, there's a last slide. Sue Hall, if you can put that back with the addresses where people can get in touch, expressions of interest to be on the CLC, additional feedback. And actually, Brad, if you're still there, or Keith, I'm sorry, there was a little technical glitch with someone's question here. Jennifer has been asking that we weren't able to see it until now. It's a very quick question. If we could just ask you, who owns the building? There's just a little quick clarification, who actually owns the building. That would mean that we could answer Quinn's question.
Sure. The owner is the person who you saw in the video, Mike Hamadi.
Yeah, okay. And it's a lease arrangement. Yeah, okay. Thank you. And so that really does wrap us up. There is a weird little slide that's going to pop up as soon as we say goodbye here, and it's a link to a survey that you can have feedback about what you thought about this meeting, like whether it worked for you and you got your input in. You don't have to do it, obviously, but don't worry, it looks kind of scary. There it is. It's like an optional survey. It'll pop up. So if you want to fill that in, that's what it looks like. That's it. We are we're out. Thank you very much. It's been great hearing all of your input. It's an honor to be doing this work for the city and for your community. And I hope that people continue to engage. We'll be here for a while yet, so thanks everyone from our side as well. So I think we're going to leave the event. Just press that red button. Thanks again. Bye, everyone.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.